Hi, hoping everyone is having a good Sunday. Thank you for participating in this town hall on the future of solar energy in the Tucson area. If you have a question, please dial *3 at this time or any time during the call. It's my pleasure to introduce Victoria Steele, former state representative from District 9. She was also a candidate for Congress. Victoria.
Thank you, Mike, and good evening. You know, it's hard to believe, but Tucson Electric Power is trying to make rooftop solar energy an endangered species in Arizona. TEP wants the Arizona Corporation Commission to approve a $25 to $30 a month surcharge on rooftop solar customers. It's as if they are taxing the sun. Now, you may have heard about the so-called solar wars that have been going on in the Phoenix area. Well, Arizona Public Service was trying to run rooftop solar out of its coverage area, but fortunately, cooler heads prevailed. Now, recently, the rooftop solar industry and Arizona Public Service reached a truce after the Corporation Commission released its Value of Solar study. Now, it's not a perfect agreement, but it does preserve rooftop solar power in the Phoenix area. Tucson Electric Power, though, is ignoring this truce. They want to start a solar war in Tucson. They want to take away your right to go solar. Why should Tucson not have the same solar choices that they have in Phoenix? It's just not fair. After this town hall, please go to www.stoptep.com. That's where you're going to get more details. You're going to learn how to take action. It's an important issue, and so we're going to be taking your questions. So if you have a question, all you have to do is dial *3 on your phone. That's the asterisk on your keypad and the number 3. Now, right now, I would like to introduce an expert on this issue, attorney and former Arizona Corporation Commissioner Chris Mays. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Victoria. It's great to be with you, and it's great to be with the people of Tucson and Pima County. As you know, it was my honor to represent Pima County and all of Arizona as an Arizona Corporation Commissioner in the 2000s when we adopted the policies that are now under attack, unfortunately, by TEP and by other utilities, at least other utilities in the past, as you pointed out. Indeed, for several years, utility monopolies have been attacking rooftop solar in Arizona and, frankly, in other parts of the country. And that is because this emerging technology allows people to produce, to generate their own power, and to lower their utility bills. And the utilities, frankly, see that as a threat. They shouldn't, but they do. And several years ago, APS tried to stop this trend of people going solar by proposing a series of fees on rooftop solar customers and reducing the amount of money that utilities, by law, had to and have to pay rooftop solar customers for the electricity, the extra electricity that they send back to the grid, a process and a law, a rule known as net metering, which we established when I was one of your corporation commissioners. Unfortunately, net metering has been reduced, but thanks to the truce that Victoria was talking about, fees on rooftop solar customers have been minimal. Certainly those fees were not as egregious and not as large in the APS case, or it looks like that's the way it's going to be. That is not what TEP, is proposing. TEP is proposing very large fees on solar customers that would essentially kill the ability of people in Tucson to go solar. The Commission will decide that TEP proposal in the TEP rate case on June 26th, so there's not much time, and we're going to talk a little bit more here about that proposal and about what the people of what folks in Pima County can do about it. So Victoria and I are going to talk about that, and we really hope you'll call in. I know we've got a lot of callers on the line now, and we'll start to have a conversation and take any questions.
Great. Thank you, Chris.
Do you have a question?
And
Oh,
if you have a question, you can call *3, just dial star or the asterisk on your keypad and then the number 3, and we would be happy to take your calls.
and we have a caller. This is Virginia Beeman. And Virginia, I believe you're in the Tucson area. Excuse me, Virginia Berman. You're on with Victoria and Chris.
Oh, hi. So what I was wanting to know is you're doing everything you can to protect solar in our state and Arizona. Is that what this what you're trying to do through this bill is
Yes.
to keep the TEP from doing that? And I assume you're probably a Democrat? I'm just
I am.
Yeah, I just, I'm just guessing because, it seems like the Republicans have given up on caring about anyone but themselves and the earth. So I'm just curious. I just assumed you must be because you seem to be wanting to actually do something that's good for our planet and for the people here.
That's one thing that I wanted to say, Virginia, and thank you so much for being our first caller today, is that this is not a partisan issue. This is our sunshine, this is our solar energy. This is important for our economy, it's important for our environment, and it's not a Democrat or a Republican issue. And we have a lot of Republicans who are on board with this issue, who are very supportive, and so I'm actually happy to have that bipartisan support on this important issue.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful, and I would agree that I'm sure that there are a lot of people who are Republican. It just seems like the ones that are in office don't seem to get that, but hopefully, you will get that bipartisan support because we definitely need it.
We sure do.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, Virginia. I am a Republican. This is Chris Mays, and I was a Republican while I was on the commission. I'm a pretty moderate Republican, and I always enjoyed getting support from Democrats. And Victoria's absolutely right. This is something that polls off the charts for both Republicans and Democrats, and so that's why it's crazy when commissioners and legislators who are Republicans decide not to support solar. And I must admit I've been pretty sad to see the support for solar decline among elected Republicans in the legislature and at the commission. I do think they came up with a good compromise, a decent compromise. It certainly wasn't perfect in what's called the value of solar case and in the APS case, especially the APS case. But we've got it. Unfortunately, you've got a utility in Tucson, TEP, that is really trying to violate that compromise and doesn't seem to be getting with the program and doesn't seem to be on the side of its own customers on this issue.
Yeah, and
thank you. I appreciate you for doing that. I know that there are still some good Republicans. It's just we got an insane man elected as president, and I don't know if he's Republican, Democrat, or what. He's just a crazy nut job as far as I'm concerned. It seems bent on destroying our earth, but anyway, so I'm sorry. I just have to put that in while I'm on the phone with you guys.
Thank you, Virginia. I appreciate it. And I wanted to let everyone know, everyone who's calling in and who's listening in, that sometimes we see things happening and we feel that we are powerless to do anything about it. But there are really some ways that you can get involved and some ways that you can step up to the plate and make sure that TEP is not able to kill the solar industry in Arizona. And Chris, why don't you talk about the hearing that's coming up and how people can show their opposition to this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say it is because of the opposition of Arizonans to what APS was originally proposing and what TEP was originally proposing that we were actually able to push back something called demand charges, which would have been truly awful in Arizona. It doesn't matter. It really matters because people came to hearings in the recent past and said, no, we don't want demand charges. We want more support at APS for net metering, that we were able to save the solar industry in the APS service territory. What we're facing, though, now because of this TEP proposal, we'll talk about what it is specifically, is you could have a situation where the people of southern Arizona are being discriminated against. And so what people need to do is go to stoptep.com. There's a lot of information there about the upcoming hearing and public comment session that the Arizona Corporation Commission will be doing. The Arizona Corporation Commission are your 5 elected commissioners. They're elected statewide. They have to be responsive to the people of Tucson. They will decide this proposal. They have the final say over it. There is a June 26th public comment session where you can show up at the Corporation Commission's hearing room offices in Tucson and come on out for that. If you can't make it to that hearing or that public comment session, you can go to stoptep.com and you can submit a letter through that website. Directly to a letter, an email, or a phone call directly to your elected commissioners. Just like Victoria was an elected official, these folks are elected officials, and they do listen to you. I can tell you, as a former corporation commissioner, I read every email that came into me, and I think that there still are commissioners who do read these emails.
All right, wonderful. And, Chris, we do have a question on the line from a Stephen, and I'm not sure if we are prepared to take his call or if this is just something that was written in. We're still figuring out the system here. But
we have Stephen live on the line.
Oh, great. Stephen, hi. You had a question about whether people would be grandfathered in.
Correct.
Hi. Go ahead and let us get the full sense of what you're asking.
Okay. Well, for those of us who've had solar for some time, the obvious self-interested question here is, are we also going to have to pay that $25 or $30 monthly fee that TEP is requesting?
Stephen, this is Chris Mays. The answer is no. You are, as a current solar homeowner, grandfathered under the current net metering policy that we passed back when I was a commissioner, that it gives you full retail credit for your electricity, the dollar for dollar credit. You are grandfathered in for 20 years from the time you went solar. And for those who haven't gone solar yet, if you get your application, you get your approvals done before the commission votes on this proposal, which will be sometime in the fall, should be okay as well, and you will also be grandfathered.
We have another question from Nancy Kowalski. Nancy, you are on the line.
Hi there. Hi, this is Nancy. I have my main question is, why is TEP dragging their feet on solar? This would be a no-brainer. Solar's up and coming. Current energy generation relies on fossil fuel. That's going nowhere. And the other issue is, at some point, they're going to be totally left out. Battery technology is increasing to the point where things like Tesla's battery wall may soon be incorporated into people's homes with solar, which would totally bypass selling back to TEP.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think you've really you've asked an incredibly important question that frankly needs to be put to the leadership of TEP. I mean, Tucson Electric Power is serving a part of Arizona that I think is intensely supportive of solar. They should be more responsive to their own customers. And I think that, they need to be thinking about the future. They need to, not be the only utility in Arizona now making this $30 a month charge proposal that would essentially make it really impossible to go solar in the Tucson area. I would add also to your point about fossil fuels, Tucson Electric Power, ironically, even though it is in probably the most progressive part of the state, is frankly the most reliant utility in the state of Arizona on fossil fuels. They have more coal-fired electricity in their generation portfolio than any other utility in Arizona, which is always struck me as odd as a former corporation commissioner that they actually had that portfolio when their customers were so clearly pro-sustainability. And to your point about batteries and about this technology, absolutely right. This is the direction that we're going in this country. People want the right to produce their own power. The technology costs are coming way, way down. And we're looking at a situation where within 5 to 10 years, battery technology will be commercialized, and people will be able to divorce themselves from the utilities. So rather than fight this future, to quote the X-Files, rather than fight the future, I think the utilities need to be joining the future.
I agree. And TEP's proposal is it's downright hostile to solar. It is designed to eliminate the ability of the people right here in southern Arizona and the Tucson area to go solar. And the Arizona Corporation should be representing, or the Corporation Commission should be representing the people, and they should reject this. But they won't know how strongly we feel about it unless we let them know. And I want you to know that historically, the leaders in Tucson and Pima County have been very supportive of efforts to protect solar in Arizona. I mean, for Pete's sakes, we've got more sunshine than just about any place on the planet. And why would TEP be proposing that they tax the sun? I mean, in essence, that's what this proposal will do. It will remove any incentives for you to go out and put solar arrays on your rooftop, and that's just not fair. And that's why I hope everyone will call in today if you have any questions. And the number is, if you're already on the line and you're hearing me, dial *3. That's the asterisk on your keypad, and then the number. And you can also go to the website that we have set up that gives you a lot more information, and it will probably answer a lot of the questions that we may not get time to get to today, and that is www.stoptep.com. And later today, we're going to give you the information on how to contact the Arizona Corporation Commission and to let them know what how you feel about this. And remember that hearing, the Corporation Commission hearing, is going to be in Tucson on June 26th, and we want you to write to them, to email, to call, and then to show up at that hearing. We've been successful in holding TEP back on other things that they wanted to do that would have been harmful, and we are going to be successful again, but we're going to need your help on doing this. So this is where you can really make a difference.
We have a call now from Brian. Brian, you're live.
Hi, Brian.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yes, I am really a fairly recent solar customer, having started the process last summer and finally getting hooked up in December. And even though it looks like I'm saving money right now, I'm pretty concerned about suggestions that are going to suddenly chop it. So I'm looking to make sure I'm grandfathered in and they can't stick whatever they call that thing for extra big charges that shouldn't be there at all.
That's right. Well, you are grandfathered in, Brian, if you already have solar. You are grandfathered under the current solar policy of net metering for about 20 years from the time you went solar. But if you were going to add more panels to an existing solar system after new rates would go into effect at TEP, it's possible you could lose your grandfathering under net metering. So we just want to make sure that this does not happen.
Yeah, and to that point, I would just say, we now have 65,000 or more solar systems in the state of Arizona that have been installed. We are now a leader in something in this country. Arizona is a leader in something, and isn't that wonderful? It's solar energy.
Yeah.
And we don't want to lose that, right, Victoria? I mean,
that's right. We have bragging rights here.
Yeah, exactly. And this is about what kind of a state we want to be. And it's about the right of future customers to go solar. So, yes, we have 65,000 solar systems installed, and Brian and others have them, and that is a wonderful. Thank you for that. But we want to protect the right of people to do this into the future. We have 450 companies that are now involved in the solar industry. It is a source of economic development for our state. We are number 1 or 2 or 3 in the nation for solar, depending on the year. We have more than 10,000 people working in the solar industry. These are good jobs providing economic development for our state.
And my mom and dad live, a lot of people think solar is only for the rich, but we know that that's not true because the latest report from GTM, it's a green tech media company, they conclude that 70% of solar owners are middle-class people, middle-income people. And what's happening here in Tucson is wonderful. My mom and dad live in a senior citizens community, and it's not, it's definitely not an upper-class community, and so they are watching as solar infrastructure is being put into their community. That's going to save them a lot on their energy bills, and they're on a fixed income, so that's important to seniors. Solar has so much benefit to us economically, even in terms of national security. So we really want to make sure that TEP is not successful in making rooftop solar an endangered species in Arizona. And we really can fight this, which is why we're letting you know this is what you can do. If you believe, as Chris and I do, and again, Chris is a Republican, I'm a Democrat, we're together on this. There are a lot of people from both sides of the aisle that know this is the future for Arizona. This is our environmental future. This is our economic future. And this is our bragging rights. I mean, we do have so much sunshine here. This is a perfect thing for us. And, it creates jobs. We really have to do this. Now, I promised you a little bit ago that I was going to give you the information on how to stop TEP's rate proposal. First, you speak out and share. So send your comments opposing TEP's proposal. Get ready to write this down. We'll repeat it again later, but try to write it down now if you can. Now, you want to oppose TEP's proposal to the ACC, the Arizona Corporation Commission. So you can call, email, and mail the ACC. So you can also get this information at stoptep.com. You can call the Arizona Corporation Commission, the ACC, and their telephone number is 1-800-535-0148. And you can email them at mailmaster@azcc.gov. And we'll give that information again before the end of the show.
Thank you, Victoria. We have Tom on the line, and he has a follow-up question.
Hi, Tom.
Yes. Am I on now?
Yes, you are.
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to follow up with the question of party affiliation, because it seems to me that the 2014 election of the corporation commissioners was a rather decisive one, in which 2 Democrats from Phoenix, both in favor of solar energy, ran against 2 others who identified themselves only as running against Obama in their Tucson advertising, and they were the successful ones, Andy Tobin Tobin and Boyd Dunn, both of whom are too old, I think, to have a fair chance of beating Obama in a fight. But if they were to go to fisticuffs, but it seems to me that they are heavily subscribed and probably supported by the American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC.
Yes,
is that
they
correct?
are. Well, you know what? I know Andy Tobin. He was the Speaker of the House when I was in the state legislature. And he's a good guy. He really is. Policy-wise, we are probably on far opposite ends of a pole. However, last year, the public action that stood up, regardless of party, and it was across party lines, that stood up recently last year against TEP, and along with Arizona Public Service and Unisource, they were not those utilities, those monopolies were not able to move forward with their mandatory demand charges on solar customers because there was a huge public outcry against this. And I showed up at one of the public hearings and testified. A lot of people stood up and just said, no, this is not okay. We don't want this. And so the corporation commissioners, they're there and they're up in front and they watch this. And so the more they see that the people out here that voted for them, and even some that voted against them, the only way they're going to keep their seats is to continue voting the way the majority of the public wants them to vote. So if we let them know this is what we want, and we are very noisy and clear about it, they'll get the message regardless of what they're doing, who they are.
And Tom, this is your moderator, Mike.
Pardon me?
This is Mike, the moderator. If I could add to what Victoria said, we were quite involved in efforts back in 2013 to prevent APS from doing what TEP is trying to do now. And I can tell you that there was a rather large meeting that was very well attended by a lot of pro-solar advocates. And indeed, it had a profound impact on that commission, whether they be Democrat or Republican. When the constituents speak, they listen.
Thank you. I do have a sort of follow-up question. It seems to me that TEP has asked its customers to avoid using power during peak hours. Is that correct? There is some concern, especially in the summer months.
Well, I am not following that so much as I am this solar hearing and making sure that we've got everybody up and running on that issue.
Related.
So, yeah, I'm not sure that we're going to be able to fully address your concerns on that right now.
Okay. A second question. I don't know whether will know the answer, but the former executive at TEP was John Schaefer, who has a long association with the university, and I suspect would be in favor of solar energy and progressive matters. Is his support known one way or another?
I have to admit I don't know. I don't know John Schaefer, but I just don't know about that.
I should think that would be a very influential voice.
Sure.
So I can only suggest that to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. We're going to bring Lois on the line now. Lois, you are live with Victoria and Chris.
Hey, Victoria and Chris, I have a question/comment. Do you think that this is all about TEP's profit? Obviously, their operating expenses and trying to maintain poles and all of their infrastructure is still going to be there, no matter if people are feeding power back or they're out on their own.
Of course.
And not being part of this.
Yes.
And what does the Corporation Commission do in order to ensure that the ratepayers, it's fair for the ratepayers and not just fair for these profitable private utilities?
All right. Well, you've got two questions there. I'm going to take the first piece of it, then I'm going to hand it over to Chris, who probably is much better at answering the second piece. The TEP, as you asked, is an investor-owned utility company, and it's regulated by the Arizona Corporation Commission. They serve well over 400,000 customers here in the Tucson area, and they're owned by a Canadian company called Fortis, and it just happens to be Canada's largest investor-owned gas and electric utility holding company. And every time that we are not able to meet our demand, we start hearing that TEP wants to start building new facilities to produce more electricity. That costs money. That uses water, that uses coal, and it's very expensive. It's very polluting to our environment, and it is really bad for our environment. So we really need to stand up against this. Chris, I'm going to let you handle the second part of Lois's question.
Right, and I mean that's exactly what the Corporation Commission is supposed to do, which is to balance the interests of the utility in being able to provide reliable electricity, but also, most importantly, according to our founding fathers in this state, to protect consumers. And so one of the disappointments that I've had about what the Commission has done in the past is that I think they have vastly undercounted and underrepresented in their decisions the value that solar brings to all ratepayers and to the system. So, for instance, as Victoria pointed out, when you have 65,000 solar systems on people's rooftops, that represents a whole bunch of power plants that don't have to be built. And that means that all ratepayers save money. When we don't have to socialize the costs of those big power plants because we're all producing our own energy, that means that ratepayers are actually helped. Now, perversely, the utilities have made the opposite argument. They have claimed that solar homeowners actually don't pay their fair share of the cost, which I think is demonstrably untrue, has been proven true in dozens of states that have done studies, independent studies, by the way. And unfortunately, in the state of Arizona, our commission has never calculated and does not count other values of solar, like water that isn't used. Solar doesn't use water. Natural gas and coal plants do. Deferred generation is not properly calculated and included. Pollution, carbon reduction, NOx and SOx reduction, all those things have a monetary value, not to mention the societal value, to the state of Arizona. So that's what the commission is supposed to do, and that's why we need as many people as possible to raise those points with the commissioners.
That's right. And let me just talk a little bit more about this TEP proposal for those who might just be joining us, because I see the numbers are changing a bit. TEP is proposing an additional $25 to $30 a month in charges for new solar customers. This is in addition to a reduction in the export credit for solar energy. So basically, what they are doing is this hostile action to solar that's akin to taxing the sun. And we know that is one of our most plentiful resources here in Arizona. It is designed to eliminate the ability of the people right here in Tucson to be able to go solar. And we are asking you to call and text and email and contact the Arizona Corporation Commission and tell them that they need to represent the people and they need to reject this proposal from TEP to increase fees for people who are going solar, because what that will do is it will prevent you from being able to go solar, because there's not going to be enough payback for it. There's not going to be enough incentive for you. But it will also shut down a job-creating huge industry, the solar industry in this state. It can shut it down. And we don't want that to happen.
Yeah, and I would add, Victoria, we have one question that came in. Someone asked, do I need to get my opinions in the docket again, even though I've done it before? I would say yes. That person probably submitted comments during phase 1 of this case.
Yeah.
Now we're in phase 2 where TEP has continued to ask for these large fees that you mentioned, the $30 fee. So please write again to oppose that $30 fee.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Yep. We have a very easy question now from Irene. Irene, you're on with Chris and Victoria.
Yes, hi. Both of you mentioned several times APS in reference, and I don't know what APS is.
I'm so sorry. Chris has been with the Arizona Corporation Commission. I've been with the Arizona Legislature, and they have acronyms everywhere you turn, and we get used to them, and we forget to speak real language. So APS stands for Arizona Public Service, and that's the utility company that really handles most of the folks in the Phoenix area and some a little south of us. So yeah, that's APS is Arizona Public Service Utility. It's the electric company.
APS is the largest utility in Arizona. Salt River Project, SRP, is the second largest, and TEP is the third largest, Tucson Electric Power.
So now we have a question from Jeff. Jeff, you are on live.
Hi, Jeff.
Good evening. Very interesting discussion. I happen to be an electrical engineer, so I view these things a little bit differently than other people. And obviously, solar is the way to go, and it's the way of the future. The point that I was going to make, which 2 callers back, I guess, already mentioned, is that as an electrical engineer, TEP has a certain amount of physical overhead that they need to keep the plant functioning. And they support many industries besides home users. And these industries have a certain rate structure, and they're probably, I don't know who uses more, the home users or these industries. But as we go solar, TEP still needs to maintain this infrastructure to support all these companies. If every single person in the state was solar, TEP would still need to keep their generators and the reactors going. And that happens is the tax base, the base goes down, so they have to raise the fees. So somehow they need to do that. So although I'm 100% in favor of everything you're saying, I'm also saying that TEP needs a certain amount of money to operate. And this is going to be a back and forth battle as we go more and more solar as to how they're going to make this transition over next 20 or 30 years. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, Jeff, I think you raise an incredibly important point. And in my day job, I run something called the Utility of the Future Center at Arizona State University. And this is one of the issues that we grapple with, which is, how do we make sure that we have a healthy utility that can continue to provide service to companies and to those individuals who don't go solar right away, because we know there are going to be early adopters and then there are going to be late adopters, and not everybody's going to go solar at the same time, and they're going to still need a utility. That being said, I think it's important to not let the utility hyperventilate about this situation, because after all, we are still only at about 3% or 4% penetration for solar in Arizona. To put that in perspective, states like Hawaii and California are up at, Hawaii is 20 to 30%, depending on the day, 17, 20%, and doing just fine, by the way. Nothing is collapsing in Hawaii. And so, it is possible to technically integrate this distributed generation, this rooftop solar, and the utility is not in peril of economic collapse at this point. TEP just announced its earnings. It announced an enormous profit for this last quarter. APS the same way, huge profits. APS, Arizona Public Service Company, is the most profitable utility in America, and yet it is proposing these fees that would essentially kill their competition, which is solar.
That's right. And we also have to remember, we want TEP to remember, what is in the public's best interest is what's most important here, not the utilities and their shareholders who are, as Chris just said, earning a very healthy return on especially on their large projects. Energy it's a public good, just like grocery stores and schools and hospitals. And having one giant hospital or school hundreds of miles away would be really bad for the public. But our own government has recognized this. And rooftop solar is another advancement when it comes to creating just an incredibly valuable distributed resource for the public. And the utilities are monopolies that they have the wherewithal and they have the ability to move with the future. We are not going to be able to stay dependent on coal. We know that. That's just fact. And so we are going to have to move to better ways of energizing our country, our community, and I just think that this is really an important way to go. And so if you have any doubts about any of that, you can see that utilities are just fine with the idea of rooftop solar when they own, control, and profit from it. And so far they haven't been very competitive with companies that specialize in solar. So I would say that the utilities aren't hurting. And if they are, as Chris said, hyperventilating about it, they should breathe into a paper bag and get over it.
Thank you very much. We have a call now from Dorothy Johnson. Dorothy, you're live with Chris and Victoria.
Thank you very much, and thanks to both of you for this very interesting approach to a problem. My comment is that it kind of addresses what has just been talked about in terms of what is good for the electric companies as well as for all of us. We have vast areas of shopping centers that would be wonderful solar farm that the electric companies could invest in to give us all shade when we park and provide for solar that would be in their control, while we homeowners could go ahead and put in our own solar and get recompense for it as is currently available. So I would suggest that it can be a win-win, that we get the energy company, the TEP, on board to be aggressive about owning solar plants in the sense of solar panels over all of our large shopping centers.
I think that's a great idea.
I do too, and let me just say that a number of shopping centers and grocery stores are starting to install solar in the parking lots. They're finding it's interesting. Studies show that people who get to park under solar shade, under parking structures that have solar on them, spend more time in the grocery store than they otherwise would have, and the grocery store makes more money because people like parking under those structures. So
I like that.
Yeah, it's a great study actually that was done at Arizona State University. But
sounds like a win-win.
Right, exactly. But to your point, when I was a commissioner, I also believe strongly that the utilities should be allowed to especially own utility-scale solar. I believe it's good when the utilities have skin in the game. I think it's good when utilities are doing solar as well. Now, we don't want them to try to crowd out the competition. We want those 450 companies to continue to do business in Arizona. But I allowed, when I was a commissioner, I led the effort to allow TEP to rate base hundreds of megawatts of solar and to make money off of it. Use utility scale solar, the big projects that get done in the desert, et cetera. Because I believe when they have skin in the game, they start to believe in it themselves, and they'll go out and do more of it. And I'm absolutely supportive of that. But that what tends to happen is the utilities love solar when they get to own it. They don't love solar when you get to own it, and that's the problem.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I think that we've got, I mean, you and I both have worked with the utility companies in the work that we have done, and wonderful people, and an absolutely necessary part of our community's infrastructure. But we cannot even begin to consider giving up solar and your right as someone who lives here in Tucson to give up rooftop solar. And so that's why we've joined with this effort to protect rooftop solar and your right to go solar in Arizona. TEP wants they want the Arizona Corporation Commission to approve a $25 to $30 a month surcharge on rooftop solar customers, and that's just not right. These are solar wars that are not necessary. This is a win-win for all of us, and hopefully cooler heads will prevail again here. But we need to make sure that that's going to happen. So yeah, I agree with you. I think TEP does better when they have skin in the game. I think that they should have skin in the game.
We have a question now from Carolyn. Carolyn, you are on live with Victoria and Chris.
Thank you so much. My name is Caroline Ellis. I'm a resident here in Tucson.
Hi, Caroline.
And I have already gone to the stoptep.com website.
Wonderful.
And because I was curious to explore it, and that's the framework for my question. It looks as though there is a lot of technical information that needs to be inserted in the comment form in order for the comment to be recognized. And I was just wondering if on your website you could post the docket number, the year,
Yes.
and the matter, the docket type, the current status, the docket type, start and end dates. You're having to, at the moment, when I hit the drop-down menu, I hit 196 records. And I absolutely, because I'm new to this topic, I had no idea what to put in there. And if you would just list those things on your website, I would love to make a comment, and I bet there are others who are less intrepid souls who might like to have that information too.
And you're right, you need to include this in any emails to the Corporation Commission, and we'll make sure it's included in the landing page, the stoptep.com page.
Okay, we'll mention that again before, and we're going to end in about 4 minutes, so we'll mention that again. So make sure you've got your pencil and paper ready, and or your your typing fingers for your computer, and we're going to give you all of the information to reach out and make a difference. And I just want to say that it really does make a difference. You clearly have a voice in this situation, and I believe that most of the people in Arizona, but particularly in Tucson, do not want to lose the solar industry in our state. It could be huge. We really should be the solar capital of the state, and then Arizona should be the solar capital of the world. Who gets more sunshine than us? We should be doing this.
We have a question for Miriam. You're on with Victoria and Chris.
Yes, thank you so much for doing.
Hi,
oh,
Miriam.
My goodness. Miriam, we just lost you. I'm sorry, if you wouldn't mind redialing or hitting in. We just lost you. That was my errant hit of the button. Miriam, if you wouldn't mind trying to get back in, maybe hit star 3-1 and we'll star 3 and we'll get you back in. My apologies. In the meantime, let's go with Paul. And Paul, I promise I won't hit the dumb button too soon. Your answer.
Okay. I'm an engineer, and I pretty much go the engineer route, because I know the world plus GDP growth, everything depends on how many power provided by a power company. And I know everybody's interested in solar, but solar is like individual houses. It's instead of building a big solar panel in the desert or in Chernobyl, Ukraine, and they build a big solar power plant, a megawatt to distribute to everybody. I don't believe America is like Henry Ford, who builds a car in the production line. If everybody built their own car, it wouldn't work engineer-wise. And I also know the solar panel degraded in the heat of sunshine. The best performance solar power is in the outer space. There's no heat because we don't depend on the heat. Okay, and the infrastructure is making America great. Again, because if you don't grow the infrastructure, America will slip down to a third world country.
Yeah, and let me just handle that question. I think that was probably true 100 years ago, and that's why we developed utilities that were very centrally based. We absolutely economies of scale were operative at that time. But we now have a situation in which distributed technologies like solar and storage and energy efficiency and demand response have become cost effective and in fact, in many cases are now less expensive than coal and natural gas and nuclear. You have situations now in which solar is bidding lower, utility scale solar is bidding lower than many, certainly coal plants and nuclear, and are actually being chosen by utilities. And then with regard to distributed generation, these technologies, as I mentioned earlier, actually save ratepayers money because they prevent the need for those big coal plants, they prevent the need for those big natural gas plants, and they save ratepayers millions of dollars over time. So I hear what you're saying, but times have changed, and we've had, we've sort of done it the same way for 100 years, but technology has evolved and is intervening in that.
All right, let's bring in Miriam now for the final moments. Miriam, we are so sorry we cut you off earlier. Hopefully you're still with us.
I'm still here. Thank you so much for doing this. I am very confused. If it is so, and I totally agree with you that we need solar power, but if it is so self-evident, what arguments are TEP making that convince the people on the commission to go with their point of view?
Well, TEP is arguing, Miriam, that it costs more to provide service to customers that have solar than it does to provide energy service to other customers. But the opposite result was actually reached in a lot of other areas of the country and areas. So that's why the study was done. And so we are going to be hotly debating that very argument as we go along. Chris, did you want to weigh in on that?
I think that's right. I think the utilities are trying to make this claim, which is just totally false, that solar customers, because they are using less electricity than those who don't have solar, are not paying what's called fixed costs of providing electricity to them, because they're still actually technically connected to the system, and they do use electricity provided by the utility at night. I will say this again: those assertions are wrong because they fail to take into consideration the savings to all ratepayers that solar provides, from not having to build new generation plants, from not having to build as much transmission and distribution lines, from not having to provide that water that a coal plant sucks up. And so the utilities want to calculate all these alleged costs associated with rooftop solar, but they don't want to calculate any of the benefits. It's sort of like trying to do a cost-benefit analysis without the benefits. Well, that just doesn't make any sense.
No, it really doesn't. Well, thank you, Miriam, for calling in. Thank you for Chris for giving us the so much of the technical aspects. I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to talk with all of you, and thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to Chris Mays, to everybody who cares about our environment and our economy. We got a lot on the line, and we don't have a lot of time. Now, remember, this Arizona Corporation Commission, the ACC, meets June 26th here in Tucson, and they will be deciding the TEP case. So this meeting starts at 10 a.m. at the Commission's offices, and that's room 222, and it's at 400 West Congress. It's downtown near I-10. Again, it's June 26th, 10 a.m. at the Commission's office, 400 West Congress Street, room 222 in Tucson. And you can email, and please do email the ACC ahead of time at mailmaster@azcc.gov to weigh in and make your opposition to TEP's fee increase on solar known ahead of time. And for meeting details and for more information on how to make yourself heard, we want you to go to the website and check that out. And that address is www.stoptep.com. And you'll need to enter in a docket number on all of these information. So whenever you send them an email or a letter or you call in, and we will make sure that that is really clear and available to everybody who goes to that website for more information on how to take action and how to stop TEP from destroying the solar industry in Arizona. That's just not fair. It's just not right. It makes no sense. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Victoria Steele along with Chris Mays. Have a great Sunday night.